It's full steam ahead when talking about the Atlanta Falcons head coaching search. And while Bill Belichick still appears to be the front runner, there is now, some other names have entered their name into the ring. We've got the two defensive guys from the Ravens, Anthony Weaver and Mike McDonald, two guys that I think we both like. Also from the Lions, we've got Aaron Glenn. Am I saying that? Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson. Obviously, Ben Johnson, one of the hottest offensive minds. And then they were also reportedly very impressed with Bobby Slowick in his first interview, and he now has a second interview.
Yeah, obviously, there's a couple of these candidates that we absolutely love. I'm particularly impressed with the Ravens guys. Mike McDonald has had some of the best young offensive minds, their offenses in a blender. And I get the Ravens have a lot of, talent on the defensive side of the ball, but Mike McDonald's scheme is second to none on that side of the ball. And I know that everybody's worried about, who's going to coach the offense? Who's going to coach the quarterback? And those are all fine questions. The quarterback is going to have to be answered regardless of who's the head coach. And that's a fine answer. And that's where I kind of turn to Anthony Weaver. He's an assistant head coach to John Harbaugh in Baltimore. He specializes in the defensive line. But on his profile on the Ravens official team website, they said that he had, a significant impact in bringing Todd Monken. A lot of Georgia fans watching this, everybody knows who Todd Monken is and who has elevated Lamar Jackson in that Baltimore offense. For all intents and purposes, it was a home run of a hire. So if you're concerned about a guy who's kind of like that CEO John Harbaugh-esque guy that is going to be able to make hires, Anthony Weaver feels like he might be the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a candidate out there, and there's very few candidates that can ever compare to this guy, so I hate making this kind of comparison. But if there is one out there that kind of strikes you as like the Mike Tomlin type, it kind of that's kind of what Anthony Weaver strikes me. Now, obviously, he'd have to go on and have one of the best coaching careers that we've seen in this generation. But I'm just saying that's kind of what it reminds me. Like Mike McDonald. I mean, you talk about a guy who's not. He's had these guys in a straitjacket. I mean, we're talking about some of the best. We're talking about Kyle Shanahan. We're talking about a league that has been taken over by basically the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, and this guy has gone in there. Bobby Slowick, Kyle Shanahan. Outside of Sean McVay, the Rams had a good game.
Mike McDonald.
And Ben Johnson earlier in the year. The Ravens went out. Yeah,
Mike McDaniel. I said Mike McDonald.
Mike McDaniel. I mean, he's had these guys in a straitjacket. So everyone wants the next sexy guy who has one of these Kyle Shanahan-esque offenses. Well, what about the guy who's literally putting them through hell? Because they've been the best offenses in the league all season until they meet up with the Ravens. And you can talk about their personnel. It ain't the 1985 Bears personnel over there. Like, It's good. But it's still, this is an offensive league, and it takes a coaching scheme along with that talent to stop these kind of offenses the way that they have.
Yeah, and another guy that came up was Bobby Slowick, who, Mike McDonald certainly got the best of. And granted, Houston was playing with house money. The Texans offense wasn't necessarily ready to compete with the top dogs in the league. We all believe C.J. Stroud's going to be an absolute monster, a force to be reckoned with for the next decade plus. But the fact of the matter is he still needs more help. Nico Collins isn't enough. Tank Dell wasn't even able to play in that Ravens game. So although that we think, the Texans are up and coming, they're not there yet. And Bobby Slowick, you want to talk about the most successful coaching tree right now is the Shanahan coaching tree. Every single guy who has gotten hired has had pretty much immediate success. And Bobby Slowick is that next branch off of the Shanahan tree. So if you're a Falcons fan, that's got to feel appealing to kind of dip back into that 2016 Falcons well that had Mike McDaniel, Matt LaFleur, and Kyle Shanahan all on that offense. So I think that Bobby Slowick is an interesting guy. That came from Jesse Palmer, but then Steve Weish, who's a national reporter, but cut his teeth in Atlanta, said they were very impressed. So he emphasized the fact that the Falcons were very impressed with Bobby Slowick.
Yeah, and we haven't even mentioned the sexiest candidate here, which is Ben Johnson. I'm not talking about his looks, guys. He's going to be the hottest commodity of all of them. I think the biggest question with Ben Johnson, everyone's been tying him to that Washington job. Obviously, they have the number 2 overall pick. He's going to get the Caleb Williams or the Drake May or even the Jaden Daniels if that's who he prefers. He's going to get whoever he wants. They also have a ton of cap space. They have a new owner. It's not like he's going under Dan Snyder. And then that old question comes up with all these candidates. If they get another opening, do they want to answer to guys like Rich McKay and go through that weird structure that we just talked about? Because as I said, everyone's talking about this from a Bill Belichick perspective, but I think it's an everybody perspective. I think there's a reason why they had to go the Arthur Smith route, because they wanted to get Rich McKay in there and stuff like that. So if they really want guys that are going to get multiple head coaching offers to take this job, they're going to have to make a decision on Rich McKay, you would think, or they're going to have to settle for someone that maybe they're very impressed with, but it's kind of like the first year guy that, hey, this is my only opportunity. Of course, I'm going to take this.
It's really a shame. I spoke about Jeff Schultz kind of illuminating Rich McKay's role and, how Arthur Blank basically, relieved him of football operations duty when he brought aboard Thomas Dimitroff and Mike Smith. And then when those two were fired, Mike Smith and then Dan Quinn was brought on. And then when those two were fired, Quinn and Dimitroff, Rich McKay, according to Schultz, Jeff Schultz, very reputable reporter, he basically, these are my words, he weaseled his way back into football operations and was very involved in day-to-day operations with Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot. So it's so bothersome to see this, it's an infestation in the Falcons organization. It really is. I'm so bothered by it. And it's going to keep the Falcons from, like you said, that's the most agonizing part. It's going to keep the Falcons from really getting those top candidates.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly feels like they're going to have to fire Rich McKay if they want to get one of those guys. And we've talked about this with Arthur Blank on several occasions. His biggest downfall is his friendships, his relationships with players, with coaches. And now you see it with Rich McKay. I mean, this guy is his best friend. This is the guy that helped bring Mercedes-Benz Stadium to Atlanta, which everyone loves, and which Arthur Blank, that's like his baby as much as, and on top of that, he's involved in other sports. He's involved with the Atlanta United. He's involved with other things that he is. So it's not just the Atlanta Falcons. And like you said, he weaseled his way in, and now he's going to be forced to make a tough decision whether I fire my best friend so we can, because that's what's best for the organization. And we're all sitting here like, this isn't that tough a decision, but we're not in the position of power.
The thing is it feels very simple. Take away football operation decision-making power. Like, you can still be on the competition committee. You can run Mercedes-Benz, the A and B group. Rich McKay, feel free, run the off the field stuff for the Falcons, but get your hand out of day-to-day operations.
Yeah, it sounds simple, but unfortunately it doesn't seem simple. Coming up after the break, Ryan Nielsen. We know he will not be in Atlanta. He's now the defensive coordinator in Jacksonville.